Hello, everyone. We're here for another Wednesday with the lovely Ricky Williams. We know who he
Great.
is because his shirt says his name. So I almost forgot who I was talking to, but then I was reminded. Um, well, okay, so months ago, Ricky sent me an article, which, as you know, one of the makers of this show, we were so delighted that he sent us an article because the conversations we were having were getting kind of flat, or they were falling short for what could have, what could happen. And so Ricky took it upon himself to improve the conversations of this show by sending me this article by Dr. Tara Yasso, and it's an article on basically cultural wealth. So first of all, Ricky, where'd you find the article and what did you think
Well,
when
first, I don't necessarily, I wasn't motivated by the show being flat. I was just motivated by thinking, I just had an idea pop into my head, and it was like, who would appreciate this idea and where could I share it? In your mind. So I couldn't text you or email it to you fast enough. So it was more just inspiration. Sometimes we're working on an idea, I'm working on an idea, and then through the conversation, the idea gains a certain level of clarity, and then right, something will pop into my mind. And usually it's a book or an article or something like that. And just the point that we've been trying to make, I think this article creates a bridge or supports the ideas that we've been sharing on the podcast.
well, okay, you just said to me before we turned on the recording that everything happens for at the right time. And okay, so maybe you didn't feel like the show was falling flat, but I was struggling at that point because I've been asking the same question of guests of like, do you consider intersections of race and astrology? And so maybe it was for me, it was the right time to get something like this. And so maybe you were psychically feeling it because I was just like, oh my God, thank you. Like this is such a cool way to move forward because we kind of had hit the topic over and over of like intersections of race in the chart. And so I guess I just felt relieved that that came like right at the right time for me as a producer. I was like thankful. So um
Just one more thing to that. I think because, and this is something about time, right? Is we can feel it's time for something, but if it's natural, but our human training makes us try to hold on to time, try to prolong time. But when we do that, we get off, we get off. And so I think we established the basis of what we were talking about. And I think it was time to go to the next step. But I don't think we could have gone to the next step without establishing that basis. And so this is the
Interesting.
next step.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like if this would have come a week earlier, I'd been like, I'm busy. I'm still working on this. No, no, I don't know. But like, I see what you're saying. Like, I do think we've moved a layer of things in the astrology community, whether or not we can see it or not. I think this idea of intersections is kind of becoming a like, well, duh kind of feeling. And I think part of that is this like ubiquitous spread we're making. We're like loam in the garden.
Yeah.
So
And I find that our conversations, and I'm going to blame you. I can blame you. I can blame you. I can blame Transiting Uranus, or I could blame both. Because you guys are uh, cooperating. Um, is that I've become radicalized specifically around gender and astrology. To the point where I'm incensed that astrologers will look at a man's chart and a woman's chart the same. Incensed. You know?
wow. Yeah, I noticed that's one of the emergent like passion points for you. Like this really showed up throughout the show is like of all the things we've talked about, that gender and astrology layer really gets you going. And I don't know if that means that we should have more people on to talk about gender and astrology or less. Like, I don't know. What's your thought on
I
that?
think, my opinion is more, because my thing is it might be uncomfortable in the beginning, but once we, pop the cherry, once we break the shell, it's smoother now,
Yeah.
and so I think you and I are up for that kind of work, and the right guests are too. So I think it's worth it.
Okay, I'll take note of that. And it's interesting, we have a gender astrology playlist, so those episodes could go into both playlists, which would be cool.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll look for that. And we could get all kinds of people to talk about gender. We could have gender theorists, we could have we could have super masculine males come on. We could have,
yeah, yes, 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 yes. I love it. I
okay.
love it. Because I think part of the conversation we're going to have today about cultural wealth, I think you could add. there's a certain wealth from, being born male and certain exactly being born not male.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's a good segue into what's cool about this article is a lot of critical race theory looks into like where there's deficits, like where there's racism or certain races aren't having don't have an equal footing to others. But this turns it into an asset-based approach, which highlights the strengths, knowledge, and resilience that people from different communities have. And so I think if we applied that to gender, we could say that there are strengths and knowledge and assets that females have and then there's strength and knowledge and assets that males have instead of saying like, oh, all those men, they don't know this or that. They'd be like, oh, let's look at all the things that men do know and what they do bring.
Oh, yes. Oh man. That to me that's beautiful. And I would add that they have based on their biology and physiology, because a lot of what we experience is through our biology and physiology. Like a woman doesn't know what it feels like, to be a teenager in class and to just get an erection all of a sudden, right? And have to deal with that experience. And a man doesn't know what it feels like to have a menstrual cycle. Like, and there's certain things that you have to think about, choices you have to make, things you have to consider. Those are just two examples based on those things over and over and over and over and over again. And the thing about us humans, if we do something over and over and over again, we tend to learn stuff. We tend to figure things out. We tend to adapt. And so that's wisdom, that's knowledge, that's experience,
That's so
as an
interesting. I
example.
keep having this like weird thing of like, does sexuality and dicks win, or does like a loving heart and does love win? Like, because I've been dealing with kind of like dicks versus love in the case of like just my own family, and it's
Mhm.
like it's kind of interesting because neither I came to the conclusion earlier today that both together win.
Dicks
Like,
need love. Yes, you got it.
does love need dicks? I don't know. So I feel like dicks are kind of needy in that equation.
They are. I mean, I think we're getting to something. Yes. I think we're getting to something.
Yeah, like if you don't love them, then they just like they go inward or something. I just what I do is throw them into an igloo and then put them in an ice fishing hole.
That'll do
Just
it. That'll
kidding. That was a dick hit. That was
that
me.
would calm them down, right? And if that's what they needed and you're willing to do it, hey, hey. But I think we're at the we're at the heart. I think we're at the heart of it. I think if you think of Mars and Venus and how they express in a man's body and how they express in a woman's body, it's different. And I just think of Venus. I was thinking about this the other day. Venus evolving through experiences of being men. Okay. And I'm generalizing 100%. Right. And the men are going out hunting, shooting things. And so the nature of getting along, right? Venus being connection, it's a certain quality. Okay. And if the women are at home taking care of the kids and cooking and weaving and making sure that the stuff that the men are working for is taken care of and can grow, right? And getting along in that environment is different, and you do that generation over generation over generation, right? It becomes part of what it means to be a man and to be a woman. And not that it's necessarily fixed, but there's wealth in that repetition.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Well, so from the first thing about this article is that it's an asset-based approach, and I think what we can change here is just to make sure to look at if we're looking at men and women or African Americans and Caucasians or whatever cultural group we're looking at, we're going to look at the assets of that group, what they bring to every equation that is something that the other parts of the equation maybe don't have. So let's like extrapolate that to like African culture and say like what do you think some of the assets are of being African or African American?
Right. I think that for me to make this theory work, the missing piece is we have to add the astrological layer, because I think of the chart or the tools we're working with, and what are we working with, the environment we're working in is what we're calling culture. And so it's about the interaction of the two. You know? So as an example, for me, all the Mars stuff in my chart, and growing up an African American male, that Mars allowed me to be successful as an athlete or a football player, because the nature of the culture, and when you see famous people on television, most of them, a majority of them are athletes. And so growing up in my culture and having a cultural way to express my aggressive urges, my need, my Mars, allowed that gift to be shaped in a specific way that has benefited my life in many, many ways.
Yeah, interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, sometimes I can't think of a lot of assets of being Caucasian, honestly. Let's see. I can't dance, and I
Mhm.
no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think they're more because they're more solar in Jupiter. I think there's more meaning, right? Is like if we're thinking about Jupiter, right, and we're thinking about Jupiter as an asset in a white male. Okay? It's like again, I'm making this up because I'm not a white male, but I imagine they go to school and they're reading the history books. They're like, yeah, we won.
Hmm.
Yeah, we won. Yeah. So right. So the feel confidence, like a Jupiter kind of confidence or faith that everything is going to go well, and really believing in it because right, it checks out. Where if that's showing up in a minority African American or sometimes in a woman, right? It's more of I had to face adversity, but I had faith and it pushed me through. So the Jupiter is going to be more of a cultural strength in adversity, where the Jupiter in the white male is going to be more of a strength when everything is going well. But you flip them. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I don't know that we need to look at the strengths of Caucasian people because, like, they're more of the dominant. They're like people are always focusing on their strengths. And I think maybe this article is meant to balance that out and say, like, can we really focus on the strengths of, African American culture and the cultures that maybe don't get looked at so heavily? Um,
I think that's the idea, but it comes flip, and the things that minorities poke fun of about the white people, it's a lack of appreciation of those strengths, and that's why I think it's important to keep it balanced because I think that's the idea. It levels the playing field. That this environment was good for growing these tomatoes, right? This environment was good for growing these kinds of tomatoes, and I think if we can appreciate that, to me, that's the point
interesting.
because right because again like for me uh, the white guy captain of the football team that everything is all gone well for them and then he gets hurt right and he's depressed and we lose him for the whole season because he's never dealt with adversity before so he's like in an existential crisis.
Hmm.
Right. So and to appreciate that instead of being hard on him is to appreciate when things are going well and we're winning right he's the best. So I think of it, the deeper reality here is appreciating the effect of environment on us and not focusing on the negative things, but focusing on the positive things. Because at our very core, right, we're beings and it's stimulus and response. And that happens over and over again. And the stimulus and response, they become more complex and more complex.
Hmm. Okay.
But it's the same mechanism, right? A being in an environment, and that environment shapes the being. And if we can focus on the assets that are shaped, then we can lean into those. If we just focus on the deficiencies, and we kind of get stuck.
Well, for manifestation theory, it's really bad to focus on the deficiencies. That's actually manifesting them. And what I love about when I asked you about racism in the first episode, you're like, "Come on, I don't want to." Basically, you said like, "Let's not make that happen by talking about it so much." Like I've always known you to be an extremely good maker of a bright future, just because of the way that you've trained your mind to be so positive and things like that. I think with this when you look at cultural wealth, it manifests wealth. If you look at racism, it manifests angst. And so I think if we flip our script now into this cultural wealth narrative, we're going to move forward in strides on promoting, you know, advancement of all cultures, astrologically speaking. Because I think what we're going to do is weave this article into everything we do moving forward. Of course, we're going to focus on the astrological layer heavy, but we're going to have this cultural wealth idea woven in, like, the fabric of what we
Mhm.
do.
Yeah, so I'm doing something tonight for the Lila community called Making Love Work. And before this, I was reviewing the questions, and they're all relationship questions. And we've trained our group to ask like real questions, right? And I'm not gonna lie, it's a little depressing, a little depressing hearing people being vulnerable about their experience in relationships. And one thing that came up a few times was attracting abusive relationships. Right? And most of us, when we hear that, our mind goes to a certain place. But that's an environment, and if someone is willing to stay in that environment for a long period of time, that environment is shaping them in some way. And we can say all the negative things about it, but there are some assets, some wealth, some value coming out of the person being in that situation. They might not see it all the time, they might not appreciate it, but I guarantee at some point in the future, they're going to look back and they're going to appreciate it.
Hmm. Wow. The Assets of Abuse. I love that show.
Yeah.
Like one of the things about the assets of when I get abused is like it makes me like way more of a warrior because like my Sun Square Mars just fights right back, you know? So I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, I guess I'm in a bigger war than I was like a half an hour ago. And I do think that helps you kind of see what you got.
Yeah. Exactly. And the way I think
What do you
about
think the assets of abuse are?
you nailed it. Right. So if we're to me it's Mars. Right. So it's becoming more of a warrior. It's exactly what it is. But it's the mindset. It's the mindset of it. And I think if we have a mindset that our environment is purposeful and meaningful, especially in the context of it's what our chart is expressing through and has expressed through.
So in football, maybe this is a personal question to the football, but do they like abuse you to get you to like be
100%. It's just part
really?
of it. If they didn't abuse you, like people would be like, something's wrong. This coach sucks. But but I mean, in the sense of when someone lifts weights, okay, that's abuse, right? You're tearing your muscles, right? Tricking them to become stronger. And our coach will say, we make practice hard so the game is easy. So it's built on the asset of abuse. And because they're aware of it, if you're aware of the asset of something, as soon as that stops paying, you stop, right? Especially if because you recognize this isn't paying me anymore. It's time to do something different.
Well, okay, I want to play a game with like we should play this game where we're like assets of everything. We're like assets of loneliness, assets
Yes.
of, whatever it
Oh,
is.
I was talking about like so I talk about Venus, and yeah, Venus is related to relationships, and I call Venus the social urge. And we don't think of it this way, but someone can be social with their pet. We kind of think of that. Someone can be social with their computer.
Hmm.
If I think of who do I want to hang out with today, my computer. It's
Andy,
like
it's Andy.
it's like what brings me joy, right? And it's social, so I have to. I'm going to go hang out with this person or this person or this person or this thing or this thing. What is going to bring me the most pleasure? And to me, the asset of loneliness, right, is that there are sometimes that you have the ability to give yourself pleasure. And if you were busy being with someone else, you would have lack of an access to the pleasure that you can give yourself.
Wow, you're good at this game. Gosh, I feel like I'm gonna make a big list of asset-based challenges for you.
I
Um,
love it.
how about oh, this one will get you. The assets of a sexless marriage.
Oh. Well, typically, if someone is staying in a sexless marriage, it means they don't have to be naked in front of someone, right? And there's a protection there.
You're so good at this. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You've had to flip the script on a lot of things in your life.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you don't have to shower for weeks. That's
Yeah.
cool.
But to me, but it's kind of embedded. If someone is willing to stay in a situation, then there's something they're getting from, right? And to me, if someone's willing to be then honest with themselves, right, it one either will make the situation more bearable, or two, it'll make it so unbearable that you're motivated to do something about it.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so I like that game where we turn deficits into assets. Okay, so there's six forms of cultural wealth that they suggest in this article. Now, of course, there could be infinite forms of cultural wealth, right? Like we don't necessarily have to stop at six, but here's six that they suggest. The first one, let's talk about them one at a time. Aspirational capital, which is the ability to maintain hope and dreams for the future despite facing barriers and systemic oppression, which you just exhibited, like right there. You have a great
Yeah.
aspirational capital.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's Jupiter Sun manifesting through this culture, right? Where I'm saying, where if it was manifesting through maybe a Caucasian white person, it just would be someone who's really confident, who doesn't doubt themselves. You know?
Well, and I think that, like, okay, so if you grow up in an oppressed group, I think you have to do what you just did was turn negative situations into positives over and over again. Like, you actually develop this aspirational muscle of hopes and dreams. Like, okay, I might be making generalizations here, but let's imagine The Voice. Okay, you know that singing show? I swear the African American people who like win The Voice are just like, I want to thank God, my mother, and like everyone that lived, and my
Yeah,
preacher, and my pastor, and my brother, and my
yeah.
sister, and like they have like way more like hopes and dreams going on than like the white person's just like, I don't know, there's something very hopes and
Yeah.
dreams about Black culture.
Well, so what you're saying is true, but and when you say I had to, I think of it more of this is where the cultural wealth manifests through the chart. That's my Jupiter conjunct the sun, my ninth house sun, right? Nourished by church, right? Manifesting through real life experiences. But if the Jupiter wasn't prominent in my chart, there'd be a different cultural wealth that we'd be talking about. And so we can say that in the African American story, in order to survive, there was religion or church. So all African Americans have, not all of them, most of us in this country at a certain time period have more access to a certain kind of Jupiter energy in our community. And if you think of, going around different churches, right? White people still go to church, but my guess is, relatively speaking, there's more minorities in church than not. And so I think this is the minority cultural wealth. It's a specific kind of aspiration that manifests when a certain planet or astrological configuration hits a certain type of environment.
Interesting. Well, you're making me think of just expanding this article to the astrological chart and saying like each of us could be said to have cultural wealth of our Jupiter sign. Like whatever Jupiter sign we're in, like if you're Jupiter in Cancer, like maybe you're a great cook. And if your Jupiter's in Gemini, maybe you're a great philosopher or whatever. And that is one of your wealths that you bring to the world.
But I think when we first started doing this, we had shows of, Jupiter in this culture, Jupiter in this culture, Mars in this culture. I think combining what you just said with that idea is the way I think of the wealth. Because if you grow up in a certain environment, there's only certain Jupiter types of experiences you're going to be able to have in that environment. So the wealth that your Jupiter produces can only come from those natural resources in that early environment.
So you're saying it's the layer of your Jupiter plus your culture that you grew up in that creates a certain wealth. That would be an even more expanded nature of just saying whatever your Jupiter is. I love that. Like Jupiter, let's say Jupiter and Cancer in Black culture versus white culture. Like what are the different wealths there? I feel like I see some like Creole dishes, like in
Yeah,
like
yeah,
something
yeah. I think of
or
I
like
think of
collards.
I think of Jupiter in Cancer and white culture as super mom.
Uh,
You know, it's super mom.
uh
You
Yeah.
know, right? It's like this overabundance of nurturing, but it's that mom. They have money, right? They have time, and the mom just sits there and she can nurture the kid and give them everything they want. You know?
Well, you know I have that, so I'm
Yeah, but I would see, yeah, right. But I see in African American culture, it would typically manifest more as the one that cooks. You
interesting.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I do definitely see like there's more family gatherings. I feel like in African American culture, like there's a lot more gathering and like extended family love. And so like yeah, maybe that Jupiter and Cancer is big cooking a big pot of something for a lot of people
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
Or I could even see, right, more like Jupiter and Cancer, because in white culture, like because religion there is more in the conservative, right? So a big conservative church picnic or gathering, you know,
Hmm.
I could see something like that. It's not exactly the same, but I think I think it's related. Jupiter and Cancer is not the same, but the moon in Sagittarius, it's still kind of Jupiter moon energy.
Hmm.
And I think of Donald Trump. He's got moon and Sag in the fourth. And You know, he has a big event. There is something Jupiter and there is something Cancer, right? The family, everyone feels like he's Papa, Grandpa, and all the Trumps are everywhere.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, doesn't he have
that's
like
it.
a Venus, Saturn, and Cancer too? So
Yeah, and the 11th. Yeah.
yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about linguistic capital. This is interesting. The
Mhm.
intellectual and social skills gained from communicating through various forms of language, including multiple languages and artistic expressions. What do we
Mhm.
think of Ebonics as a wealth?
I think more what she's pointing out is I think especially African Americans and minorities that grow up as minorities in their communities is you have to be bicultural. And so call it um, code switching sometimes, where if I'm talking to a black friend, I'll be talking to someone, and then a white friend will come, and I'll be talking, and my friend will, you just change. You were talking this way. What are you talking to this person? And then you just change and talk, right? And so the ability to appreciate this is the culture I come from, right? And this is another culture that thinks about things differently, right? And I have to live in both. I think
Interesting.
that's and that would be Mercury, and I think probably some Venus.
That is so beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about deaf culture for a second because people are always like deaf people, they're oppressed, they're disabled or whatever. But from a linguistic capital perspective, the wealth of deaf people is like off the charts. Like sign language can say things. Okay, like if you're trying to explain your car accident in English, you're like, well, then this happened, this, and you're like, you had to be there. You can't like really explain. But in sign language, it's like my car was here, the other car was here, this came in, and they like are showing the car accident. Like the wealth of sign language is just insane of like what that can do. And I think and they do a lot of code switching. This is a sign for code switching, but like they talk about code switching all the time of I'm talking to a deaf person, then I talk to a hearing person and I code switch to be able to work with this hearing person, and like that happens all the time. I didn't know that. I never thought of that in terms of African American people, but that's true.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
very much
you
so.
speak two languages essentially.
Yeah. And you can call it ebonics, but it's more of it's funny, like you've seen the picture of my wife, and sometimes our 4-year-old will be talking and he'll say a word that's not proper English, and she'll say that's not right. And I'll say, that's not the way that you say it, but let's,
Yeah. You said my 4-year-old be talking. That was kind of
yeah.
Ebonics. Well, and I'm speaking of maybe Ebonics isn't the culturally appropriate word, but I think that it's a beautiful language. It's way more poetic and musical than like white language. Like I feel like in the concepts available in Ebonics are much more artistic than white people.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
I don't if you say like Ricky Williams be wearing that shirt. Like it basically the topic, it's like instead of saying like you are wearing that shirt, it's like Ricky Williams be wearing that shirt. Like that's a different picture. It's like it makes you into your spirit in the equation. Like I don't know, I just think there is something wealthy about that
Yeah.
language.
And I would say what's wealthy about it is the soul in it, and I think proper English, in order to be proper, you have to take the soul out of it.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
a very soulless language. I mean, and in language and culture, they basically are enmeshed in the growth pattern of a culture. Like it's really interesting to take the same song and have it played in a bunch of different linguistic pockets. Like if you have metal music be played in like Iceland, like Icelandic metal is just like what like whatever they do. Like there is a wealth of putting different languages on the same chord progression or the same so I think I love this one of just like when you're looking at working with people of different cultures, the language and concepts available in language is priceless, honestly.
There's a nuance here. I'm thinking about applying this concept in real life. Is you're looking at two charts, and African American female and a Caucasian female, right? And you're looking at the charts, and they both have very powerful Venus and Mercury, and it's like you want them to run customer support, you know? And just looking at the charts, right? They look the same, and they're both powerful Venus, powerful Mercury, right? How do we see culture coming through? Huh?
Mm.
I mean, we have to give more detail than just skin color, but I'm oversimplifying, but just thinking that they're gonna have grown up in different environments, even if it was the same neighborhood, right? They're growing up in different environments, different cultures, and how those cultures are gonna shape. Because when we say a strong Venus and a strong Mercury is someone that has learned to communicate and get along, but they've learned to communicate and get along in a specific environment with a specific type of person,
Mm.
right? And that's going to shape the way the wealth of that Venus or Mercury manifests. And I think that nuance is extremely meaningful and useful in life.
Well, it's interesting to look at different. Okay, so okay, I keep obsessing on Tech Nine's Mercury, which you've never looked at, but okay, his Mercury is like trivia. It's like a Mercury Venus Neptune conjunction in Sag, square Mars, opposed Saturn in Gemini. Like his Mercury is banana. It literally like goes so fast, and. So I think one of the cultural wealths of like African people is rap music. And it's like it would be taking it takes the same Mercury. It's like in a white person that might come out as like spit poetry or something like that. But for Tech Nine, it's coming out in this like this rap music. So I think we could look at like the Mercury's in different. A lot of rappers are also very Scorpio kind of thing. Whereas in white culture, that comes out as like metal music. In black culture, it comes out as rap, and it's like.
There you go. Yeah. That's a great example. That is such a good example.
Thank you. So I get
Yeah.
paid the big bucks. That's why I'm so wealthy.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I noticed monetary capital is not in this article.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine, and I'll see if she'll come on. She's one of my students. And she was raised in Northern California. Her mom is Japanese, raised in the US. No, raised in Japan, I think. And her dad is Japanese, raised in the US. And she's got like seven planets in the seventh house. I mean, it's like a huge seventh house. She's got Mars, Venus, and the Sun all conjunct in Scorpio in the seventh, opposing her first house moon.
Wow.
She also has Mercury, Uranus at the end of Libra, also opposing her moon. And so, and she's the Aries rising. My joke about her in the conversations are very scorpionic. The pictures she sends and the memes. You know, and as we were talking, it's like I said, you have an alter ego. You need to get a tramp stamp on your back that says FMBO. Fuck my brains out. You know?
This is one of your
And
students.
yeah, 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 it is. I mean, this is after several conversations, but she's got Saturn in the fourth, okay,
Uh-huh.
and that Saturn in the fourth being raised by Japanese parents, okay, you would have no idea she was a Scorpio. It's like at least what we say is that Saturn in the fourth, so where we come from, but tap on Saturn and Japanese culture. Oh man, it's like got her. It's got her. And fourth house is an angular house and it's powerful. But when you have a connection like that in the chart where something that's really strong in the person's culture and there's a hook for it in the chart in a powerful place like the fourth house, it's like, whoa.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that. We could like do shows on like the cultural wealth of like Japanese culture and like I mean it's like an infinite tweak onto our minds of like how can we look at the assets of like every culture that ever lived and like but from what you're saying too, it's this chart plus this culture is really where we
Yes.
get into like we're like
That's That's it. Because I did more of the PG rated of in my culture, being a football player. But it's easier to see in gender, right? Because a woman that has Mars, Venus, and Aries in the eighth probably ain't gonna be a football player. Okay. I mean, now we have the WNBA, women can play sports, so there are more outlets for it. But what's the expectations and the opportunities in the environment are what shape and determine how we evolve and how we grow.
mhm. I like it. I like that you have a sexualized brand. I think it's because you that Mars and Aries. It's and especially with Venus. It's like in teaching they say that you have to be yourself. If you're not yourself, your students don't trust you. So you have to render yourself to a teaching persona that is you. And it's like if it is your brand that you're Marshall, like you should be a Marshall teacher. And like some people need that. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
I'm working on that calibration all the time of because I have a Mercury in Scorpio too, so I can say some shit, you know? But like I'm
Yeah.
always working on that calibration of like how sexual to be in with students and like how
Yeah.
not to be.
Well, I think it's important to because I think once we appreciate the cultural wealth, we can start to add it as context in our story. Because we don't always know where someone comes from, and even if we do, we just have assumptions about it. So when I feel Mars coming on, right, in the story I'm telling or how I'm teaching, I might throw in really quick football stories, you know,
Mhm, mhm.
where people can appreciate, oh, like, no, he's being an asshole or he's mean, but they can appreciate the context of where I came from and that experience of how I got this way. And then in comparison, they realize, oh, that was really bad. So what he's doing ain't so bad.
Oh, interesting. I can't reach my Macho Man Randy Savage puppet that I have because people call me Andy Savage.
Yeah,
I'm so
perfect.
savage in
Yeah.
class sometimes.
Here's an example, like my mom. Okay, my mom started coming to class, right? And now I don't even have to like. All I say, if I feel a Mars attack, I just say, right, I'm Sandy's son, and because my mom is in class, everyone gets it.
Oh, that's funny. That's freaking funny. Oh my God. I wish I could use my parents as a yeah, my parents are not helping me on that. Okay, so all right, so let's talk about familial capital.
Yes.
Um, so familial capital, speaking of family, I mean, well,
Mhm.
this is, all things in the right time.
Mhm.
This is the knowledge, practices, and social resources nurtured through kinship networks, extended families, and community ties.
Mhm.
So I guess here we would be looking for fourth house, like home, family.
I think it's fourth house, but also 11th house, and I'd say moon. I'd say fourth, 11th, and moon are the ones that come out. And the way I think about it is two white people walking down the street, they don't know each other, right?
Mhm.
I'm walking down the street, black guy comes, he might recognize me, he might not, but oftentimes, right? We'll
Okay,
acknowledge
how
each
often do
other.
you get recognized on the street?
It depends where I am and what time of year it is.
Okay.
Yeah. But we might say, what's up? Right. So this idea of I'm in a crowd and everyone's different, and I see someone that looks like me, and I feel open enough to express some kind of openness or kinship to the other person. And not that it's everyone is like that, but if you tell that story around Black people, right, they'll smile and they'll nod, right, because we've all been in that situation. And I think anytime where a group is oppressed, right, one of the effects is it can help the group bond together more, and there is wealth that comes out of that kind of bonding.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's interesting, not to waylay this to deaf culture, but that's an interesting case where a lot of them get oppressed by their family of origin because their family is hearing and the deaf person is then deaf. But in deaf people that grow up in a deaf family, oh my God, the familial capital there is just
Yeah,
insane, right?
yeah,
Because it also contributes to their linguistic capital of now I have this amazing sign language that I got from my family of origin. So deaf people with deaf families are really coveted in deaf
yeah.
culture.
Yeah, I think about, and it's unfortunate, but probably, way too many times in slave culture that young children were taken away from their parents, or even family members were separated. And
Mhm,
so, in that environment, you had to learn to receive nurturing from someone who wasn't blood family. And I think this is where the moon, and I would say also the fourth house, right? Because in life, whether we have our family or not, we all need home, right? We all need to feel like we're part of something, and people that, right, would go to bat for us no matter what.
mhm.
And I think people who have had situations where it was no matter what, and they got to see who would come to bat, that becomes something that is more easy to value.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that familial wealth piece. I mean, there is like the nepotism involved. I mean, that would be like serious familial wealth literally would be like if someone in your family is I don't know, like would it be familial wealth if like your parent was an astrologer like Dava Green, who's like Jeff Green's son, like does that's like literal familial wealth of I don't know. Maybe Sandy is What kind of wealth does Sandy
But
bring?
I would say so. Our familial wealth in this context, it's common in minority cultures to have aunties and uncles, aunties and uncles, right? Mentors, people that deacons at the church, people that take us under their wing so that we can learn. And I find for a lot of white people, this idea, I mean, if they're in business, they'll have mentors, but this idea of someone else knows more than me, like when I spent some time in India and doing a lot of yoga stuff, and there it's like very much, if it's your music teacher, right? You call the music teacher guru, right? That there's this appreciation of aunties and uncles, right?
Interesting.
That there are people above us that have something to offer us that can really help us grow.
Yeah, I do think white people are lacking in the extended family category. And like, I mean, we have grandmas and grandpas, but like, I think it's in like certain Asian cultures or like cultures that are very poor capitalistically on money. They are extremely wealthy in extended family because the extended family comes to live in the house with you. And so they like you actually have all this familial wealth, even if you don't have a lot of capital. That's been a thing in a lot of cultures, you
Yeah,
know.
they call it, there's individualistic cultures and collectivist cultures. And to get what you're talking about is the ones that cherish more the group and taking care of each other. You know, they value less, being the winner, being the one on top.
Yeah,
So,
it's true. And
it,
there's something called fictive kinship. Have you heard of this? It's
mm,
it's basically the term for chosen family, and they say that people who have more fictive kinship are much more happy. So even your chosen family,
yeah,
like we could even say like GLBT people, maybe they have more familial wealth in the chosen family, even if they're ostracized from their family of origin, that they have that
yeah,
chosen family.
yeah. When Steve, my teacher, talks about the fourth house, he focuses more on chosen family.
Oh
You
wow.
know, the way he says it is like our first family, we didn't choose, but hopefully we learned how to choose, so that when it is time for us to choose, we choose a happier situation.
Nice. Okay, the next one is social capital, which is the ability to leverage social networks and community connections for access to resources, information, and support. That feels very 11th house.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
So, community connections and social networks. Do you think the church would be counted in that?
Oh, for sure. Because if the community is a religious community, and I think of the 11th house, I think of groups and organizations, but also think of long-term goals. And the idea, whatever our long-term goals are, it's where we're supported if we surround ourselves with people that have similar goals.
Mm.
So in a community that needed salvation, right, or to be rescued, that's a long-term goal for everyone. And having faith and practicing that faith together can become very, very powerful. And we see most of the most meaningful movements since slavery and the African American movement have been around religious organizations,
Interesting. Okay, this
churches.
makes me think of astrologers in general as having a lot of social capital because the community of astrologers is very strong. I don't know, did you find that you get some social capital out of being an astrologer? Oh my God, your face.
Uh, maybe it's a sore topic. I don't know. I think the astrological community is yes, we kind of all agree, kind of, sort of, but then after that, we don't agree at all about anything.
So you have to
So,
agree in order to have social capital.
well, I think you have to be on to a certain extent. I think that's what I'm saying about a group and being on the same page, at least having the same goals so that we can move in that direction. And
Mhm.
I think if we had a group of people that did the kind of astrology that we do, I think then you could have a group. But otherwise it becomes this is the right way, this is the right way, and it
Do you
divides
think
the group.
being a football player gave you social capital?
Yeah, because being in an environment for a year, because the nature of the capital, it's not made up, right? It's what I'm saying. It's the chart expressing through a specific environment over and over again, enough to where it starts to shape. And so being again, seeing guys naked by being a bunch of naked guys where we do something really hard together, and we
Mhm.
have to trust each other and believe in each other and hurt and cry and laugh in front of each other. That yeah, right. Certain things, with men, I think I might have a level of comfort in going there because I've been a lot of places with men.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I'm gonna say something kind of weird here, but I think being a celebrity gives you a lot of social capital.
Uh, so again, I think it's the yes. If someone is going through a certain, but we'd have to look at the planet. We'd have to look at the planet. I would say for me, the being famous and social capital, what has given me the most is it's really been for my Mercury. You know, being forced to have to speak to the public. You know, it was hard and it was different, but I think I'm Gemini on the cusp of my 10th house is what,
Interesting.
right? Because it's one thing, if Mercury in the eighth, if I have my internal deep thoughts about things, but when someone puts a mic in front of you and you have to open your mouth and say something, ooh, okay. And so having to have everyone that I know and people that I don't know hear my ideas and my thoughts and doing that over and over and over and over again, hey, yeah, I'm comfortable speaking and sharing what I think on a very deep level to
Hmm.
pretty much anyone.
Interesting. Well, so I'm going to speak to this one a little bit. Okay, why is being my friend fun? Well, if you befriend me, like you actually befriend like a big, huge crew of people, because like on my team, there's just like tons of people on my team, and then there's like we have tons of actors that we work with, and so it's like when people come in and they get to know me as a friend, they get to know like a whole crew of people, and I think social capital is capital. It's like, you know. Am I paying you to be on this show with social capital? Maybe, you know what I mean? It's like you're far more famous than I am, but every view is capital. Every view on the YouTube show is some capital, right? So it's like I think of this one actually very litigiously because when I'm thinking about who to work with and why, it's like there's people who come in with like literally no capital wanting a lot of my capital, but what they don't want my money, they want my crowd, and it's just like that is worth it's priceless actually, this crowd that we're working with,
Yeah.
so I know this article's not about me, but I just had
No,
to.
no, but so it's, I mean, of course, I'm going to take it down the philosophical path, but if we think of wealth, you know, in order for wealth to be meaningful, you got to have something valuable, right? Something valuable to someone else. You
Hmm.
know? So part of, I think, appreciating our cultural wealth is also appreciating where to put ourselves. You know? Because
Interesting.
the way I'm thinking, the previous environments we're in are preparing us for the later environments we are in. I don't know if you've seen the Karate Kid movies, any of them.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. So I was thinking about this, especially being on the other side of midlife. Think about in both movies, in the first one with Ralph Macchio, it was wax on, wax off, it was putting the nails in the fence. And then in the one with Jaden Smith, it was pick up your jacket, put it on, take it off, hang it up. And you just kept doing it over and over and over and over again. And it
Hmm.
finally got to a point where he's basically like, I'm sick of this shit. Why do I have to keep doing this? I'm done. Right. And in both movies, that's when the teacher said, okay, now it's time to learn. And he started like throwing punches and he was doing the drills and he was like, oh, I was doing something all along. I didn't realize it. And I feel like that's the first half of life. It's like wax off, right? And then you get to the other side and it's like,
Hmm.
oh, that's what I was doing this for.
Well,
Now,
you like maturation capital.
well, but it's saying the environment is that if we don't appreciate our cultural wealth, we can't appreciate what we're meant to be doing. So my wife, a corporate attorney, and I was sitting downstairs the other day, and she runs all the customer support for Leela and a whole bunch of other stuff, and she's sitting down there for like 7 hours straight answering customer service emails. And I'm looking at like if I was like if I didn't have you doing this, I would my head would explode. If I had to do that, my head would explode. And I was thinking about all the hours when she was doing legal work that she hated, right? She hated it, paid the bills, but she hated it. But that training, right? The wealth she got from being a corporate attorney is allowing her to be a beast and what she contributes to our business.
I hope you
Huh?
play the song Super Beast for her
Yeah.
by
If you
Rob Zombie. Okay, we
yeah.
have to go on to navigational capital. which is the knowledge and skills developed to navigate and succeed within oppressive and marginalized systems.
Jupiter.
Okay.
That's totally Jupiter.
I feel like you do have some navigational capital with like how you navigate your life like but I mean this could
I'd
be
say Jupiter and Mars. I say Jupiter and Mars.
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um okay, let's move to the last one because we only have 5 minutes, which is resistant capital, which is the knowledge and skills acquired by communities of color to challenge and resist inequity and oppression, often passed down through generations.
That'd be Uranus.
Oh yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
That's so you're honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like you have that? Like you're able to resist inequity?
I do. I do.
I think the Pluto and Libra generation has a lot of this capital. No matter what color they are, there is
Yeah.
like inequity fighting of that
But
Pluto and Libra.
well, what's interesting is she said six, and we probably could have made it three, maybe four. But I think if we looked at each culture and we said what's the cultural wealth that specifically tends to manifest from this culture, I believe we could classify them by planets.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love, I mean, we could say, what is the cultural wealth of Mars, or what is the wealth of Mars? What is the wealth of Venus? Like, that could be its own article. We could do a show on that, like the wealth of the planet, like planetary wealth, we could call it. Wow, I've never heard that. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Would you want to do that show?
I would love to. I think it'd be an interesting conversation, and it would open people's minds and invite a new way to think about astrology and
All
how to
right.
use it.
Planetary wealth. I'll have to think about who to have as a guest on there. But that would be looking at like what is the wealth of each energy in the chart, and we could even do the wealth of this each sign. I mean, that
Well,
would
I,
be
I think, but I would want to start with bringing someone in from a specific culture, self-identifying, with a specific culture, and ask them, right, in layman's terms, right, just introduce the concept of cultural wealth and say, what do you think, the wealth is from your culture? And
you
then
want to
you and
bring your
I,
friend from Japan on?
I will, yeah. And then you and I have entered the discussion, and we like the goal is we try to pinpoint what astrological symbols correspond to the wealth emerging from that culture. And I think if it's coming from someone who has a deep connection to that culture and self-identifies, that it will be a real expression enough that we'll be able to say, hey, it feels like this or it feels like this.
Interesting. Well, okay, so yeah, as far as if you ever want to have a guest on, maybe you could start an email train with me and the guest and we could get them on the schedule.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, okay, because I don't want to be the only one with having guests on.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also wanted to have your son on.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think you'll really, really like him. Yeah.
What's his name?
Blaze?
Blaze. Okay, yeah, I would love to meet Blaze. Let's do the Blaze show and the Japanese student show.
Yeah. I think Blaze would be good because he's young. And so there's a culture of youth.
Oh.
And I think there is a cultural wealth of being young. Yeah. Young,
Absolutely.
dumb, and full
Well,
of
each
calm.
each each generation has different planetary, like outer planet wealth. Like I'll ask my teenager for advice because she has like these certain outer planets, and I'm like, what does your chart think on this case? And then she'll tell me I'm like best advice ever. But it's like I don't necessarily think that older people have the best advice. It depends on their chart, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So. Well, this has really been enlightening as far as like I love this the asset-based approach of this article, and it's really what we need as far as like the manifesting a wealthy experience of race and astrology, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I like it.
thank you, Ricky. You're so sensitive.
Yeah, I sure am.
Sending this article. How was Jupiter going over your moon square Pluto? How was that?
I only gained like 15 pounds.
Oh wow. I thought you were gonna say you
Not
gained,
15. I gained like 10 pounds.
I thought you were
I
gonna
started, I started working on a book. That's what I did. I started working on a book.
I thought you were gonna say you gained 15 friends.
I could have if I left the
Yeah.
house.
Well,
If I
a
wasn't at the
Cancer,
house eating, if I wasn't at the house eating ice cream, maybe I would have.
Well, I've been getting chubby with Jupiter and Cancer too, and I've been thinking about how I keep choosing it because it's like I'm more into being a mama bear than anything, and it's like like go bears, man. Having a belly is more mama than not.
Yeah, it's real.
So,
It's real.
all right, Ricky. Well, it was great to spend an hour with you. They say research shows that having deep conversations with people makes people less depressed.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel less depressed already.
All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, I'll see you later.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I already am.
Oh, good.